What if two completely different people are thinking about you at the same time, but for completely different reasons? One person may be looking back at the past with regret, finally realizing that walking away from you was not as easy as they once believed it would be. The other person may have never truly let you go emotionally, even if they have never openly admitted what they feel. And the strange part is that both energies seem to be moving toward you at the same time. One wants another chance because they now understand what they lost, while the other has been carrying feelings that have quietly grown stronger with time. So if you have recently felt as though someone from your past is suddenly coming back into your thoughts, while another person around you seems unusually interested, pay attention. There may be much more happening beneath the surface than you realize. Because today's reading is not simply about two people wanting your attention. It is about two very different emotional stories arriving at the same crossroads. One person may be driven by regret, memories, and the realization that they made a decision they cannot completely undo. The other may be driven by genuine emotional attachment, the kind of feeling that survives distance, silence, and uncertainty. But before you assume that the person who regrets leaving is automatically the person you should choose, I want you to listen carefully to the cards. Sometimes the person who comes back is not necessarily the person who belongs in your future. Sometimes someone returns only because they finally recognize the value of what they lost, while another person has been quietly waiting for an opportunity to show you what consistent love actually feels like. Welcome to Tarot and Self-Growth. If you are new here, take a deep breath, clear your mind, and allow this reading to unfold naturally. Think about the person who immediately came into your mind when you saw the title, but do not limit the reading to them, because there may be another energy that you have not fully recognized yet. Take whatever resonates with you and leave whatever does not. Tarot is a tool for reflection and intuition, not a guarantee of another person's actions or your future. And if you enjoy these relationship readings, make sure you subscribe to Self-Growth Discovery, because we have many more readings coming that explore love, emotional connections, hidden feelings, and the lessons that help us understand ourselves more deeply. Now let's get into the cards, because the first energy coming through is already telling a very specific story. The first card is the Six of Cups, and this immediately brings forward the energy of someone from your past. There is a person here who has been looking backward, even if they have not admitted it. This is someone who may have once convinced themselves that leaving you was the right thing to do. Perhaps they thought the relationship had become too complicated. Perhaps they believed they needed freedom. Or perhaps pride and circumstances made them feel that walking away was easier than staying and dealing with their emotions. At the time, they may have appeared certain. They may even have acted as though they had already moved on. But the Six of Cups tells me that something changed after the distance became real. Once you were no longer easily accessible, memories began carrying a different weight. This person may remember things about you that they never expected to miss. It could be the way you used to speak to them, the small routines you shared, the way you made them feel understood, or even simple conversations that seemed ordinary at the time. Sometimes we do not recognize the value of something while it is happening because we become accustomed to its presence. Then one day it is gone, and suddenly the silence feels much louder than expected. That is the energy I feel around this first person. They may have thought they were leaving a relationship, but eventually realized they were also leaving behind a particular emotional experience that has been difficult to recreate. The Five of Cups confirms this feeling of regret. This card often appears when someone is focused on what has been lost and is emotionally replaying the past. I feel that this person has moments where they wonder whether they made the wrong decision. They may not spend every day thinking about you, but something can trigger the memory unexpectedly. A song, a location, a familiar name, a photograph, or even a conversation with another person can suddenly bring you back into their mind. And when that happens, they may remember not only the good moments, but also the moment when everything changed. There could be a particular argument, a decision, a message they wish they had answered differently, or an opportunity they now realize they did not appreciate when they had it. The interesting part is that regret does not always lead immediately to action. Sometimes regret creates fear. This person may be thinking, what if I contact them and they no longer want anything to do with me? They may wonder whether you have moved on or whether you are involved with someone else. They may even be afraid that you will ask questions they do not know how to answer. After all, it is much easier to say, I miss you, than to explain why you left in the first place. It is easier to apologize than to prove that you have changed. And I think that is one of the reasons this person has been holding themselves back. The Emperor now appears, and this tells me there is a strong pride or control issue around this person. They do not like feeling emotionally exposed. They may be accustomed to being the one who makes the decisions, the one who controls the pace, or the one who walks away first when things become too emotionally intense. If that sounds like the person you are thinking about, then you may understand why their regret has not automatically turned into a confession. Their feelings may be strong, but their pride is fighting against them. They may want you to make the first move because it would allow them to return without having to admit that they were wrong. But there is another energy coming through, and this one feels completely different. The King of Cups appears, and this is where I feel the second person entering the reading. This person has emotions, but they keep them under control. They may not be the person who constantly sends messages or openly flirts with you. In fact, some of you may be surprised to hear that this person has such deep feelings because they have been extremely careful about hiding them. The King of Cups can represent someone who feels intensely but does not want their emotions to control their behavior. They may have been watching, observing, and waiting for the right moment rather than rushing forward. This person could already be somewhere around you. For some viewers, this may be a friend or acquaintance. For others, it could be someone you have spoken with casually but never seriously considered romantically. There may even be someone who has been consistently present in your life while you were emotionally focused on somebody else. And because their feelings did not arrive with chaos or drama, you may not have recognized how significant they actually were. Sometimes we become so accustomed to emotional intensity that calm interest feels almost invisible. But the cards are telling me this person has not been indifferent. The Lovers now appears, and this brings the connection into sharper focus. The Lovers is not simply a card of romance. It is also a card of choice, alignment, attraction, and the decision to move towards something with awareness. This tells me that the second person may eventually have to make a choice about whether they are willing to reveal what they feel. They may have been waiting because they did not want to interfere with your existing situation. They may have assumed you were still emotionally attached to someone else, or perhaps they simply did not know whether you would feel the same way. And this is where the reading becomes fascinating, because you may have two people approaching you from completely different emotional positions. One person looks at you and sees someone they lost. The other looks at you and sees someone they still have the opportunity to build something with. One is looking backward. The other is looking forward. One may be asking for another chance. The other may be quietly hoping for a first real chance. The Page of Wands brings communication into the second person's energy. I would not necessarily expect a dramatic declaration immediately. It may begin in a very casual way. A simple message, a question, a reaction to something you post, an excuse to start a conversation, something that appears ordinary on the surface but carries more meaning underneath it. This person may be testing the waters, trying to see how receptive you are before revealing anything deeper. They may want to know whether you are emotionally available before they risk exposing themselves. And if that happens, pay attention to how the conversation makes you feel. Do you feel relaxed? Do you feel respected? Do you feel like you can be yourself? Or do you immediately feel anxious, uncertain, and desperate to understand where you stand? This is important because your body can sometimes recognize a pattern before your mind does. One connection may create intense emotional highs and lows because of uncertainty, while another may feel quieter but far more stable. Now, I want to return to the person who regrets leaving, because the wheel of fortune has appeared around their energy. This suggests that their circumstances are changing. Something has shifted in their life or their perspective. They may have gone through an experience that forced them to look at their previous choices differently. Perhaps another relationship did not work out. Perhaps they discovered that the freedom they thought they wanted did not make them as happy as they expected. Or perhaps time simply gave them enough distance to recognize what they could not see while they were emotionally involved. The Wheel of Fortune can bring old cycles back around, but there is a warning here. Just because a person returns does not mean the old relationship should automatically resume. A cycle can return because it needs closure just as easily as it can return because there is another opportunity. This is why you should not judge their return by the emotion it creates inside you. Judge it by what they are actually offering. If they come back saying they miss you, that is information. If they come back taking responsibility, communicating clearly, respecting your boundaries, and showing consistent effort, that is something much more meaningful. The Queen of Swords appears beside this energy, and she is asking you not to lose your clarity just because your heart becomes emotional. You may still care about this person. You may even have imagined hearing from them many times. But if they return, you have every right to ask questions. What happened? Why did you leave? What has changed? What do you want now? And most importantly, what are you prepared to do differently? You do not have to punish them for the past, but you also do not have to pretend the past never happened. Now let's look at the second person's feelings more deeply because the Two of Cups has appeared. This is a very different kind of energy. The Two of Cups represents mutual emotional connection and the potential for two people to meet each other on equal ground. This person may not simply be attracted to you. They may genuinely feel emotionally compatible with you. They may like the way you think, the way you communicate, the way you handle difficult situations, and the way you make them feel seen. Their interest may be growing because they are discovering more of who you are rather than simply idealizing you from a distance. And there is something important here. This person may actually admire the strength you have developed through your past experiences. They may see that you have been through emotional disappointment, but instead of becoming completely closed off, you have learned to protect your peace. They may respect that about you. They may also sense that you are no longer willing to accept the same patterns you once tolerated, and that could be one reason they have been cautious. They do not want to approach you with empty promises. Judgment now comes into the reading, and this is the card of awakening, accountability, and realizing the truth after a period of confusion. It suggests that both situations may become clearer soon, but more importantly, you are going to become clearer about what you actually want. That may be the biggest twist of this entire reading. You might have spent months or even years wishing that the person who walked away would return. You may have imagined the apology, the reunion, and the moment when they finally admit that they made a mistake. But if that moment actually arrives, you may discover that your heart has changed. Because sometimes we spend so much time waiting for someone to recognize our value that we forget to ask whether we still value what they are offering. And this is where the reading takes an unexpected turn. The question may not be, which person wants me more? It may become, which connection allows me to become more of myself? One person may bring history, chemistry, and unresolved emotion. The other may bring patience, consistency, and the possibility of something new. One may know exactly how to awaken your memories. The other may know how to make you feel secure in the present. The cards are not telling you to choose immediately. They are telling you to observe. Let both people reveal themselves through their behavior. Do not make the decision based on who reaches out first, who says the most romantic words, or who suddenly becomes jealous when they realize someone else wants your attention. Watch who respects you when they do not get exactly what they want. Watch who communicates when things become uncomfortable. Watch who remains consistent after the excitement fades, because the next card is the devil. And this is where we need to be especially careful. The devil can represent intense attraction, attachment, temptation, and emotional patterns that are difficult to break. For some of you, this card belongs to the first person. The connection may have been addictive because of the constant uncertainty. When they were close, you felt euphoric. When they disappeared, you felt empty. When they returned, the emotional high came rushing back. That kind of cycle can feel like destiny because it is so intense, but intensity alone does not prove that something is healthy. And if the first person returns, they may know exactly how to awaken those old emotions. A familiar voice, an apology, a few carefully chosen words, and suddenly you may feel as though you are back in the beginning again. That is why the Queen of Swords remains so important. You can listen without surrendering your boundaries. You can care without immediately reopening the entire relationship. You can forgive without giving someone unlimited access to you. At the same time, I do not want you to reject the past simply because it is the past. People can change. People can mature. People can genuinely recognize their mistakes. The cards are not asking you to become cynical. They are asking you to become discerning. There is a difference between being guarded and being wise. Being guarded says, nobody gets close. Being wise says, you can get close, but your actions will determine how far. And that brings us to the Star, which is one of the most beautiful cards to receive after the Devil. The Star represents healing, renewal, hope, and a return to emotional balance. It tells me that regardless of which person ultimately becomes important in your future, you are moving toward a period where you will no longer need confusion to feel connected. You are beginning to understand that love does not have to hurt constantly to be meaningful. You do not have to chase someone to prove your feelings. You do not have to compete for someone's attention. You do not have to accept uncertainty simply because the chemistry is powerful. And perhaps that is why these two energies are appearing at the same time. One person is coming back to show you what you once wanted. The other may be arriving to show you what you actually need. But before you decide what either of them means for your future, there is one final layer to this reading that we have not uncovered yet, the hidden motivation behind the person who is about to make the first move. All right, the video has become quite long now, so let's wrap it up here. I'll see you soon with a new video. Thanks for watching.